Don't waste a good failure. It can become the blueprint for your best practices. Now, if you're anything like me, you've beaten yourself up when something didn't go the way that you had hoped, planned, or dreamed. But self-blame is not a strategy. It's a trap. Today, we're going to learn how to assess what went wrong and why, and from there you can build new practices to reduce the risk of failure for the same reason. Hi, I'm Laverne McKinnon, and welcome to the Moonshot Mentor community. If you're navigating a career transition, whether you're stepping up, getting started, or making a pivot, you're in the right place. I'm a career strategist and a grief recovery specialist, and I love to help people going through career changes sort through the noise spiritually, strategically, and tactically so you can make moves that actually feel aligned with your values and what's most important to you in your life. There is no need to ever go it alone. Let's figure out what's next for you together. When I met with an A-list actor, I'm just going to call him Ricardo, I was smitten. He was so charming and charismatic, and he had this really compelling vision for the project that had brought us together. And to be completely transparent, because transparency is one of my core values, I was also longing to produce a film with a little high-profile pizzazz. Now, this was during the height of my producing career in television and film, and so this was pre-COVID, pre-lockdown. And frankly, I was wowed and intimidated by the Bel Air Hotel. This is where I met Ricardo for coffee. He was staying there while promoting his latest film. Now, flash forward 8 months later, I counted up all the hours of sweat equity that I had put into this project. Everything from reading and meeting with writers, negotiating rights deals and partnership agreements, creative work sessions, a ton of research, and honestly, like a lot of hand-holding since Ricardo was new to the world of producing. And after I counted up all those sweat equity hours, I realized that we were spinning our wheels. The partnership on this project was failing to produce real results. So it's not like this was the first time something like this has happened to me or anybody else. Projects fail all the time. Historically, though, I would internalize those feelings of being a failure, and then I would try to outrun it by working harder. So what needed to happen was redefining my relationship with failure so that it didn't own me, so that I didn't keep avoiding risks, resisting change, or playing small. So how did I do this? Well, the first step I took was to understand the differences between failures, mistakes, and losses because they are not the same or interchangeable. Failure is about outcomes. You aimed for something and you didn't reach it. Now, that might involve missteps, but it can also involve forces outside of your control like systems, timing, bias, budget cuts, industry shifts. Life, right? Mistakes, though, are about action, a decision that you took that didn't pan out, a miscalculation, a wrong turn. Mistakes are usually unintentional and they're often repairable. They are part of learning, not necessarily a verdict on how much you're worth. Now, loss is about absence. Something ended, changed, disappeared, or was taken away. Now, you might feel sadness or maybe even some grief because something meaningful is now gone. As human beings, we mix these up all the time. So here are some examples. You get laid off, that's a loss, and then you tell yourself it's because you weren't good enough, and so that was a failure. You make a decision that doesn't work out, that's a mistake, and then you convince yourself that you'll never succeed, another failure. You aim for something and you miss the mark, a failure, and then feel like something important has been taken away from you, that's a loss. When a clear outcome doesn't happen, when a project falls apart, a deal doesn't close, or a plan doesn't work, do a post-mortem. That just means taking time to reflect and gain deeper insight into what happened. But so frequently we don't do it. The failure just feels so enormous. We want to run from it as quickly as we possibly can. And then we wind up repeating the same failures over and over again. So the way to conduct a post-mortem in practice is you might ask yourself something like, what went well and why? What didn't go well and why? What beliefs or assumptions led me or us here? What would I do the same? What would I do differently next time? So these questions themselves, they're not groundbreaking, But what is groundbreaking is being able to slow your roll and just quiet everything down so that you can have time for real reflection. Now, the key here is focusing on data over feelings, because failure becomes useful when we can unpack and separate out facts from feelings. Now, our feelings can fuel our curiosity and drive us to dig for facts. Now, to stress this over and over again, the key to reducing future risk is identifying what you've learned and turning it into a best practice. It's not enough just to know, oh, this is what worked and why, and what didn't work and why. You have to convert that into something that becomes repeatable. When I did a proper post-mortem post Ricardo in that situation, this is what I took away. What went well? The process of reading and meeting with writers. It was so comprehensive, it was thoughtful, and it played to both of our strengths. Ricardo and I both love to read and love having creative conversations. Now, we reviewed over 50 writers and we met with 5 of them, and that process worked so well, and I would definitely repeat that again. What didn't go so well was choosing a writer. We just weren't aligned on how much experience the writer needed to develop, sell, write, and produce the project. Ricardo and I had really different expectations. Now, there were some assumptions that got in the way, like I assumed that Ricardo was more knowledgeable about the process of developing, producing, and that it quite honestly can take time to find the right creative match, and that timetables are guidelines, they're not etched in stone. Now, Ricardo, I can't say this for sure because I never questioned him on it, but based on his words and actions, I felt like he did have an assumption that was a very tight timeline to lock in the writer because he was going to be starting production on a big action film and that was going to take him out for several months. So he wanted the writer to be working while he was on set somewhere. And also Ricardo kind of misunderstood the role of the writer because he thought the writer was simply going to be just going off of his vision for the project as opposed to having the writer having their own ideas. At one point, Ricardo actually asked me, why do they all have different ideas? So that was a red flag. What I would do the same, I'd keep the process of researching, reading, and meeting with the writers. It was efficient, comprehensive, and well received. Agents and managers told me many times how much they appreciated the quick, decisive, precise feedback. What I would do differently boils down to 2 lessons, each now a best practice. First, I'd establish what's known in coaching as a designed alliance. Is taking unspoken expectations and making them explicit from the start. This helps set the partnership up for success. For example, let's use email rather than text for communication. Let's not interrupt each other during creative conversations, and let's agree on a clear written vision for the project to use almost like as a RFP to writers before meeting with them so they would know what the expectations are and directionally where we wanted to go. So my new best practice is create a designed alliance from the beginning. Second, I realized I got excited about the opportunity to work with a high-profile actor, and I ignored the part of me that wasn't truly excited about the creative concept itself. Yikes. New best practice, I have to feel at least 80% passionate about the project, not just the person attached to it. Okay, a few more things. When you create best practices, framing matters. Language rooted in positive intent is easier to remember, act on, and has the most impact. So, for example, instead of saying something like, honey, don't forget to pick up the ice, say, honey, remember to pick up the ice. Studies show our brains process affirmative direction more easily, and the same applies to our work. So a best practice like, don't work with project managers who are difficult, that is really vague and fear-based. And so you're putting out into the world difficult project managers. However, if you frame your best practice in the affirmative, then you can magnetize what it is you truly need. So something like partner with collaborators who respect boundaries and timelines. Now that's clear, empowering, and actionable. Bottom line, remember where we started. Don't waste a good failure. It's easy to slip into self-blame or blaming others when things don't go the way that we had hoped, planned, or dreamed. But when we take time to reflect and examine what happened and we name what we learned, failure becomes this incredible tool. Okay, that's it for today. And before you go, if you're not yet a paid Moonshot Mentor Substack subscriber and you want more support to stay motivated, feel less alone, and move through your career transition with strategy and purpose, come join my paid Substack community. It's $5 a month, and you get exclusive journal prompts, guided meditations, live workshops, and a community of ambitious, purpose-driven professionals. You can sign up at moonshotmentor.substack.com, and you'll also find all of my socials and how to work with me there as well. A super big thank you to Amanda Kenny for the editing and social media expertise, and to Lauren Deacon, who manages the Moonshot Mentor brand and is an organizational and research genius. Thank you for spending time with me today. I really appreciate your investment of time and your interest. If you have questions, please drop me a note, DM me. I'd love to hear from you. Until next week, keep going after your moonshot.